All right. We're here with Robb Wilson. Robb, thanks for pulling up, man.
You're welcome, Bobby. Thanks for having me, man. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Hey, likewise, man. Appreciate you coming down. It's raining today.
Yes, it's raining hard.
It's raining hard in California, man.
It was like it was snowing on the fucking freeway on the drive here.
Big time. Big time. Got all wet, but you know, you're not a stranger to water.
I'm not a stranger to water. It's one of my favorite elements.
Absolutely, man. So let's kick it off. Where are you originally from?
I'm from Long Beach, California. I was born in the Philippines, and I moved to Long Beach when I was about 4 years old. My dad was in the Air Force. So I wouldn't call myself a military brat by any means. We weren't moving around a bunch, you know. I just once we moved to Long Beach when I was 4 years old, we resided there from then on out. My parents raised me in a house that I lived in until I moved out when I was about 20 years old. I had a sister, went to the Long Beach Unified Public School District, man. That was just a whole special experience in itself, all the way from elementary school, junior high, and through high school, where I didn't graduate, but I got kicked out of my high school, went to finish at adult night school and got my GED.
That's what's up. So what was your experience like in high school?
Junior high and high school were real interesting, you know, and just the Long Beach Public School District in general was interesting. You know, when I was actually in elementary school, sorry to take it back a little bit, they started busing kids into our neighborhood school from the downtown areas, specifically the new migrants from Cambodia and Vietnam and stuff like that. So it was pretty cool. So from a real young age, I was interacting with different cultures. And I thought that was just the coolest thing, man. So I think that started happening when I was about second grade. And from that time on, man, some of my best friends were Cambodians. And then I just went to school with a whole melting pot of everybody, black guys, Mexicans, Asians of all different descents, and that was really cool. And in junior high was kind of a similar experience, just a lot of different cultures. And when I was in junior high, it was kind of when the whole crack era kicked off and gangbanging got real big and popular and stuff.
80s and 90s.
80s and 90s, specifically the 80s.
Yeah.
Was when it really took off. People were, different gangs were really, really upfront with where they're from, wearing their specific colors, certain types of shoes and all this stuff, really broadcasting what they were about, you know? And so that was interesting for me. So I grew up in a middle class neighborhood in Long Beach. You know, I didn't grow up in the hood or nothing like that. I didn't grow up in a bad neighborhood, but we struggled financially. You know, my parents put the roof over our head, but other than, you know, having some food on the table and the roof over our head, we didn't have a whole lot, you know? So it was interesting. So I kind of got into selling weed and stuff when I was in junior high. And that's how I made my money. Even actually to back it up a little bit, in elementary school, I used to buy candy and separate it and wrap it up and sell it on the playground. I used to buy fuzzy pencils and sell them on the playground, whatever it took to make a few extra bucks.
You know,
I was the plug with all kinds of different, you know, whether it's some little school supplies that were kind of cool, or some extracurricular snacks and whatnot in elementary school. So, because I learned at a real young age that if I wanted some extra stuff, I had to get my hustle on. Because the parents didn't have the money to buy me the things that I wanted. You know, they were there with the things that I needed for the most part, but if I wanted some little extra, I had to get it myself. So the candy and school supplies turned into me selling weed pretty much full time. You know, in junior high, I was kind of ahead of my time with that, and I was just kind of known as the guy. And that's kind of how I survived. And
so selling weed in junior high, I mean, what was that like? Did you ever get into any altercations while you were doing that?
Yeah, I had some situations. Back then in junior high, if you're selling weed, you know, it ain't like it is today. It was a big deal, you know, definite felony. I had some different situations where, you know, I got caught with some weed, almost got caught with some weed. But one story in particular was, so I went to school with a lot of different gangsters, you know, everything from Crips, Longos, you know, the Essays and the Cholos, Sons of Samoa, all the Asian gangsters. It just, my school, we had it all going on. And we all pretty much got along for the most part, too. And I was kind of a street kid just by nature, you know. By that time, I was living that hustler life and was kind of attracted. And I was really into hip-hop music and graffiti. I had people in my life that kind of turned me on to those things, and I just kind of adapted to that. But one day after school, I was leaving school and I was on the corner, and just out of nowhere, I got jumped by 4 Crips that I went to school with. They knew I was a weed man, and they jumped me and took my weed. And that kind of, you know, they took my weed, and they also took a couple bucks that I had on me as well. Later that day, I went home and told my cousin. See, I'm a surfer too. Let me just throw that in there real quick. By this time, I was already surfing all the time. That was my main passion in life. That was my go-to. That was my escape, and that's where I spent all my extra energy. I was already ditching school to go surfing. I just was in the ocean religiously. So after I got jumped, I went home that day, and, you know, at some point I called my cousin Jose and told him what happened, you know, just in conversation. And he's about 5 years older than me. He's like a big brother and a mentor, and he's the one that got me into the whole weed game and everything. And I told him what happened, that I got jumped and they took my money and my weed. And he goes, man, fuck those guys. He goes, let's throw them in the ocean and see how tough they are then. And that stuck with me forever, you know. Surfers, I took my beating and I took my lumps. I didn't fucking tell nobody, you know. I didn't go and rat them out and tell the authorities. I just took my lumps and fucking kept it moving. And but when he said that to me, that really resonated, and it stuck with me forever, and even to this day. Surfers, if you're in the ocean all the time, you're used to punishment. You're used to getting your ass kicked. And when you're in the ocean getting your ass kicked, there ain't nowhere to run. You know, so it's just kind of a place that teaches you how to be tough and how to overcome struggles in life, and not to run, but to deal with them in the moment, you know, so.
So what other hobbies were you into when you were growing up? I know surfing was one of them. You got into surfing at what age?
I started surfing when I was about 10 maybe 11. Prior to that, I grew up playing all the regular stuff, you know, baseball, football, and whatnot. My dad was just a huge baseball player, so back then we didn't have a lot of options like the kids have these days, right. You know. So I grew up playing the normal sports, and my heart was never in any of those things at all. I just was kind of going through the motions. You know, my dad was making me play, trying his best to keep me out of trouble. And I'm a mischievous guy by nature, you know, so I've been getting in trouble my entire life. And just trying to do things my way, going against the grain. I don't like rules. To this day, I still don't like rules. And the second that my cousin put a surfboard in my hand, everything changed. Not all for the better, but I quit playing baseball. I quit playing football. I found my true love immediately. It was the ocean and surfing, and that's where I wanted to be. And back then, that kind of came with a certain lifestyle. It's like you're expected to ditch school. If you wanted to be a legitimate surfer, if you want to be a legitimate anything in life, there's things that are expected of you to do to become that fully engulfed in whatever that is. So as a surfer back in the day, it was you don't go to school, you smoke as much fucking weed as possible, and you defy authority, and you blow off every family event, every job, everything you can imagine. You never ever miss a day in the ocean, or if there's going to be, you know, a day of good swell, a day of good surfing, it dictated everything that I've ever done in my entire life. So that's kind of how that went down. Yeah. Yeah.
So at some point you got into photography, ocean photography, and you know, to be specific. when did you get into that, and what was the motivation to get into photography?
I got into photography through injuries. You know, you saw my story, my documentary, Still Here. You know, I've been, once again, surfing my entire life, and so now let's fast forward to 28 years old. I had my first back surgery. That was pretty successful. By this time, I was actually snowboarding a lot too. I was a surfer and a snowboarder and skateboarder and stuff. All those three kind of just go hand in hand. So at maybe around the age 32, 33, I started having some more consistent, regular back problems. And it kind of runs in my family. My dad's had back surgery, and you find out later on that I had degenerative disc disease. You don't really know that you have that until you get a little older and it starts affecting you. But so I caught wind of the surgery that they were doing. They were starting to progress in the field of artificial disc replacements. And at the time, I had some money saved up. I'd done some things in my life. Was pretty successful at this point, you know. And I heard about this artificial disc implant, and I decided that was going to be the route for me. So I started investigating that, looking into the surgeries and whatnot, and the cost of it, and my insurance wouldn't pay for it. So I was continuing to have back problems, and now I found myself out of the water. I found myself out of the water again with fragmented disc at L5, S1, and I couldn't surf anymore. And so I was really bummed out, and I wanted to do whatever I could do to get this, you know, fixed. And I didn't think a regular surgery was going to do it for me. So I went to a doctor in Beverly Hills. I researched, and my research had led me down the path to find this guy. He assured me that the artificial disc surgery was going to be what was going to change my life for the better, forever. Basically, it was going to turn me into a superhero. After that, I would never have any back problems again, etc. So I went ahead and jumped on board with that, man. He sold me the disc. He sold me the idea that this is really going to be the procedure for me. So I went through the back surgery. It turned into a complete fucking nightmare. It turned into a couple different surgeries. The doctor put in the wrong size disc. He put it in asymmetrically, so crooked. He didn't put it in properly. And then he sliced a nerve in my spine that ran through my spinal column at the same time. And that left me unable to walk for a long time. And, you know, I'll make this story short, but I was heartbroken. I was out of the ocean. I was dependent on other people to do everything for me. I lost a lot of things in my life, but one of the biggest things was I wasn't in the ocean anymore. Now at this point, you know, I'd been out of the water a couple years, couldn't surf anymore. It just was a complete chaos and a total nightmare, you know, and I was going through depression, I was suicidal, I was heartbroken, I was all these just different things, you know, and I didn't know what to do about it. And during this process, I was trying to find other passions, other things to get into that would take my mind off of what happened to me, help me solve the physical pain that I was in, etc. And after being out of the water for a couple of years, sorry, real quick, but for instance, you know, I bought art supplies. I was dabbling in drawing. I bought a guitar. None of these things are really doing it for me, you know. I just was lost. I was a complete lost soul. Then out of nowhere one day, my friend Jason Hoffman recommended that I get a water camera. Now they're starting to make these little water cameras that are available to the public, you know. This is before GoPros. So he goes, hey, Rob Dog, you know, that's what they call me. That's my nickname. And he goes, why don't you get yourself a little water camera set up and get in the ocean and start taking pictures of the boys, of just your friends surfing and stuff. And that way you're back in the ocean. You might not be surfing again, but at least you're in the ocean. You're in your element and you're back around with your friends and your homies and your people that you miss so much. Because when I wasn't surfing for a couple years, I was miserable, you know, and I didn't want to talk to anybody that surfed. I was just ignoring phone calls from my friends because they weren't getting it. They called me up and like, oh man, let me just tell you how good the fucking, because that's what surfers do. We're always talking about the surf. That's all we talk about. And what surfboards we're riding and where we're going to go to get waves. We're going to go to Mexico. We're going to go to fucking Hawaii. I just couldn't handle hearing any of that stuff anymore. So he brought the idea to me of getting a camera, so I did that. And I went and bought a little setup and jumped in the ocean and started taking photos, and it fucking changed my life, man. You know, instantly I was kind of smiling again, and I felt like that piece of my heart had been replaced. And the camera was pretty low tech. It would only take one photo at a time. You know, it took 20 minutes to get the thing ready so I could even get in the water with it. And as I started doing this, I started getting some decent photos with this kind of almost prehistoric type equipment, you know. I guess prehistoric's not the right word, but it wasn't very advanced. There wasn't a lot of technology involved, you know. So I could take one picture at a time. And before I know it, I was getting some pretty good pictures, and people were like, hey, you're pretty good at this, you know? And I'm noticing it myself, and I'm looking at the photos, and I was like, oh yeah, these are fucking pretty good, you know, considering what I got to work with. And then camera equipment started evolving, and I started researching and looking into it. Next thing you know, I bought a little bit more, some more high-tech equipment. I bought a custom water housing. So you buy the camera, then you get a housing, which is like a waterproof box with a pistol grip on it, and you put the camera inside the box, and then you jump in the ocean. And now I can take, you know, 5 or 6 photos a second, you know, kind of like a machine gun a little bit real quick. And then that way, then you're going to be more likely to get a good photo. You know, you're getting a sequence of photos and stuff. So as I started doing that, and as I became more passionate with it, I started growing and evolving, not only with my equipment, but just with my passion and my skill, my love for the craft of photography. And before I knew it, I was building relationships with like local pro surfers. And then along came with that was the local pro photographers starting to get fucking pissed off at me. Because now all of a sudden I'm a threat to their business, and I didn't even know that there was a business. You know, I just was kind of like, you know, so they're coming at me like, hey, dude, you can't take photos at this beach, and you can't shoot photos of this guy. That's my guy. This is my beach, and stuff like that. And I was just kind of perplexed. Like, I didn't know that was a thing. Right. And I was just kind of like, what the fuck are you talking about? And then with my personality and the way that I am, I was kind of like, well, you can't fucking tell me what to do, dude. I'm gonna do what I want to do. Like, who the fuck are you? You know? And I'm like, you're some fucking punk from Orange County, dude, that's just been spoon-fed your whole fucking life, you know? Grew up with money and all this other kind of shit. Like, I'm gonna do what I want to do. I've been surfing these beaches my entire life. I have more fucking stake in these fucking beaches than you ever do. And I already know all these guys and stuff. So that's kind of how it all evolved. And I just started getting better and better with the harder I worked, the more effort I put into it, the more successful I started becoming with, you know, building these relationships with the surfers. Then I started traveling up and down the coast. You know, next thing you know, I'm jumping in cars with these surfers and taking trips up and down the coast and shooting photos and getting pretty damn good at what I was doing. So, you know, I don't need to go step by step, but next thing you know, I started getting recognized. And one of those photographers that was kind of busting my balls and trying to control me, he ended up coming to me, and he was a really well-known photographer, surf photographer. His name's Joe Foster, man. He used to date Madonna. He was used to be all these. He's a very successful photographer. He's done a lot of stuff in the fashion world and had a pretty fucking intense reputation as a surf photographer. And he came to me and decided, you know, made me an offer. He goes, hey, man, I don't want to compete against you. He goes, but you're fucking my business all up. You're a threat to my business. Now guys are calling you instead of calling me. And he's like, let's team up and work together. And so that's what we did. And we started. He had a little magazine that he created, and it was an online digital publication called Aladdin Surf Mag. And this was before there really was digital online surfing magazines. So together, he and I teamed up, and we ended up making this the #1 digital surfing publication in the world. And it was international. And before we know it, man, we're interviewing and profiling all the best surfers in the world, the best photographers in the world. And it was a super duper insane and legitimate publication. And that's kind of where things really, and that got me all this exposure. And that's where my career really took off as a surf photographer.
Right. So rewind it back. So back when you had that injury, which set you back for a little bit, that took place back in 2007.
2004, 2005.
2004, 2005?
I had the surgery. I'm sorry. I did have the surgery in 2007.
Okay.
Yes. January 4th, 2007.
There you go. So the doctor sliced the major nerve.
Correct. Which
left you in sort of like a state of paralysis for a little bit. You couldn't walk for a while. He then put you on. What was it? Were you put on any drugs or anything like that? Any painkillers to reduce this pain? Well, talk to me about that process.
Okay, so here's what happened. So as the doctor sliced this major nerve in my spine, I came home from the hospital, and once the drugs wore off that they had me on, all of a sudden I had this incredible sensation of nerve pain. And anyone that's ever experienced nerve pain knows that that's probably the most intense pain that you will ever experience. I don't care what anyone says. It doesn't get any fucking gnarlier than that. But for months, it felt like somebody was running a razor blade down the side of my leg into my toes, and it felt like they literally were slicing my toes off one, just like they're slicing garlic, just and that went on for months. They couldn't do anything for it. You know, they tried a couple injections or whatever, but ultimately I was wearing fentanyl patches. I was on morphine. What else? Fentanyl, morphine, Oxycontins.
Yeah.
Klonopins, Xanax, a couple different kind of antidepressant medications. Oh, and gabapentin. So fentanyl, morphine, Oxycontins, gabapentin, Xanax, and Klonopins was my main little cocktail. I was on all of those things, and it didn't even touch the pain.
That's crazy, because you know those fentanyl patches are like 100 times stronger than morphine.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
And you still felt the pain.
It didn't even touch the pain at all.
Wow.
It was unbearable. I could not find a position to lay in to get comfortable. A lot of times if we're in some pain, we can maybe lay a certain way or sit a certain way and it'll alleviate or ease the pain. There was no easing or alleviating anything. And, you know, my son was 8 months old at the time that this happened. And all I wanted to do was fucking kill myself. That's how, and I'm not a suicidal type of guy per se, but at the time, all I wanted to do, once this went on, this went on for months, and that amount of pain, it was excruciating. I can't even explain what that was like, other than what I just did with the scenario of, you know,
right,
running a razor blade down my leg and in my toes, but that's the only way that's what it felt like, literally. And I couldn't get away from it. The doctors didn't know what to do. Nothing was working, and I wanted to put a gun in my mouth and blow my fucking head off, straight up, you know, keeping it real. And the only reason I didn't do that is because I wanted my son to have a father. So I fought to not fucking kill myself, and to just hoping that someday I was going to get through this. You know, I did. And I had to have everything done for me. You know, people were having to put my shoes and socks on for me. You know, I didn't walk unassisted for so long. But when eventually we got the pain a little bit under control, and as I started getting a little bit better, if I even wanted to go out for a walk, people had to tie my shoes for me once again, put my socks on, help me get dressed. I couldn't do anything for myself. It fucking sucked. And at the meantime, I got this little baby, and all I could think about was his face. If I was to kill myself, you know, and they tell him, hey, you don't have a dad, you know, at that whatever point in his life that was, and you know, your dad did this. I just didn't want my son to grow up without a dad.
Right.
That's what it came down to. And his fucking precious little face and his little life is what kept me fighting. It was what gave me the strength to just to get through it, you know?
Yeah, suicide is a big problem.
Yeah.
A lot of people deal with that on a daily basis. Contemplated suicide. You fell into a deep depression, and how'd you fight those demons, man? What was going through your mind at the time of you going through all this? I know you said your son came to mind. What else was going through your head?
I just wanted to die.
Yeah.
Every fucking day, all day long. And I had, not only with the physical pain, but I was having tremendous panic attacks. Like, every second that I was awake, I was in a state of panic. So I was scared to go to sleep at night. And I couldn't really, even for months, I couldn't even get out of bed. So I was scared to go to sleep at night, and I was scared. I'd wake up in the morning and instantly have this sensation of fear and of being scared, and my heart just going off. And all this medication wasn't doing anything for me, and they're prescribing this medication and that medication, like antidepressants, and you know, I'm taking Xanax. It's fucking not doing shit for me while I was awake. You know, I'd take enough of some stuff, I'd fall asleep and pass the fuck out, you know, but the second I'd wake up, it just was nonstop. My heart was just pounding in my chest. I was scared of my future. I didn't think I was ever going to make it through this. And I didn't know what to do, and all I could think about was killing myself. But once again, just seeing my little son's face, and I always wanted to be a dad. And so I wasn't going to give up, man.
Yeah.
I just kept fucking fighting for my son. Dynamite.
Yeah, Dynamite.
That's my guy, man. Yeah, that's his real birth name.
That's what you got on your...
So it says on my knuckles right there.
Yeah.
Dynamite, yeah. And today he and I are super tight. He knows the fucking story, you know, and he appreciates what I did for him. He's just a real good kid, and we're real close. He's 16 years old now, man. 16
years old.
Yeah.
How time flies.
Yeah.
Man, so how long from that point did you get back into to surfing and everything? How long from where you were going through all that depression and contemplating suicide, how long from that point did you start getting into the water again? I know you didn't think that you could get back into the water at one point.
I didn't think I was ever even going to be able to walk again, much less go in the fucking ocean. You know, and I was like, so I'd say it took about a year, 10, 12 months before I was actually walking without a walker. I was walking unassisted. I could put my own shoes and socks on and things like that. And I'd say, that's a good question, man, but I would say maybe 2 years after the surgery is when I got into the photography thing. Guessing probably something about that.
Yeah.
So about 2 years, I went in the ocean. I didn't go anywhere near the ocean, look at the ocean for about a solid 2 years. Then I got into the water as a water photographer, pursued that, and then, you know, maybe 10 years later, got to a point where I was confident enough to try to surf again. I've got in a little bit of better shape physically, built up the courage, and then I went about 10 years without actually riding any waves.
No waves, 10 years.
No, not riding any waves.
Right.
And I tried everything. I tried boogie boarding. I tried everything under the fucking sun to ride some waves, you know. And I was taking pictures, and that was cool. And that really, once again, was my saving grace. You know, it was my savior, and it just. I was really happy with that. Just being in the mix, man. I got to be in the fucking game, dude, of life, whatever it is I'm involved in. And
I mean, was it painful, man?
Which part?
Going back into the water?
Physically?
Yeah.
No. You know what? Let's back it up a little bit. What got me off all the drugs and whatnot was the radio frequency ablation procedure. So being on all those drugs and all this other stuff didn't do shit for me. And then I met a doctor by the name of Dr. Kang Lai, and he's in Lake Forest. And that dude has pulled the literal and the proverbial gun out of my mouth so many fucking times. He introduced me to the radio frequency ablation, which is the procedure I was talking about, where they go in and they burn the nerves in the joints in the disc area of my spine. That it deadens the nerves, puts them to sleep, and it stops the transmission of pain to my brain. So that's why I was able to finally get off the fentanyl and all the other drugs. And I had to go on a Suboxone routine to get off of the fentanyl. That's what guys go on to get off of heroin and whatnot. So Suboxone was also a part of that. And that was fucking hell coming off of that. You know, it was just a whole nother experience in itself. And that led to me some more suicidal thoughts and tendencies and stuff. It was a rough fucking road, you know? But getting back so that procedure alleviated my pain, to answer your question. So for the first time now in a couple of years, I really wasn't in pain, and it was something new. And so that gave me the courage to get in the ocean and start swimming around and, you know, step by step seeing how I felt. And I was like, okay, I feel pretty good. And I'm getting thrashed around on the waves and doing my thing, and it was amazing. And then say, you know, another 8 years as a photographer maybe or something, and I decided, like, I want to try and surf again. And then I did that, you know, and that story is out there. My documentary Still Here, if you guys want to look that up. It's called Still Here, the Robb Wilson story. You know, you can Google that anywhere.
Great documentary, by the way.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. It was painful to make that. And that was the first time that I ever really put my story out there for the public to see. I was real transparent, talked about what I'd been through, and I wanted to tell my story with the hopes of helping other people, especially people that have had back surgeries, that are stuck in the mindset that they're never going to be able to do whether it's their original passion or anything physical ever again, you know. So that was the goal with that, and it seemed to really, you know, had a great effect. I got a lot of great response from that, and that was a cool thing. And so in that movie, in that documentary, I catch my first wave in 10 years, you know, and that was pretty powerful, and it changed me as a person. And I'm a shortboarder, like I ride little surfboards, but in that movie I rode a big long one because it's the first time I ever surfed in 10 years. So I'm not real experienced with riding a longboard, but you could just tell that I've been surfing my whole life, and like, damn, he hasn't surfed in 10 years, and then he catches a wave. And I was filmed up in Santa Cruz, California. I had a lot of relationships with a lot of the best surfers and filmers up there. So we got together, made this documentary, and it was really, really cool, and I'm real proud of it, you know. And it was the first time, once again, that I ever put my story out there, and it was life-changing, for sure. It was great, and I wasn't in a lot of pain surfing. I felt pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you also used to snowboard, skateboard.
I still snowboard all the time.
Yeah?
Yeah.
That's a crazy sport right there. It takes a lot out of you.
It does, yeah. Have you done it?
Huh?
Have you snowboarded?
No, but my friends have. And they tell me the story. They get beat up, you know, especially when you're just starting off doing something like that, like snowboarding. I want to do it. I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. But they told me the stories, and they get hurt. They get pounded, bro.
Yeah, it's people are like, how come you can snowboard but you can't surf? So they automatically think surfing is this more friendly, gentle activity, but it's right. Because you're in the water. But surfing's fucking brutal too. But so I actually had to stop surfing again about 2 years ago. I no longer surf. I'll probably never surf again.
Why? Why is that?
Because of the paddling, and this is why I can snowboard, but I cannot surf. So when you're paddling on a surfboard, you're forced to go in kind of a hyperextension position when you're laying on the board, okay? And so not only with the injuries that I have in my spine, but I have the degenerative disc disease that I was born with, like I mentioned, but I also have scoliosis, which is where my spine curves. And my spine curves and it twists also. It's just grown and done some weird stuff over the years. So when I go and throw the hyperextension and laying on my surfboard into the mix, my spine just doesn't like that anymore. So I was okay surfing again for a couple years, and then all of a sudden the second I would lay down on a surfboard, it started really bothering my spine. You know, my spine had changed so much that, and I fought that for a while too, but it just was excruciating pain once again. And I had to give it up, man, you know, but with snowboarding, there's no laying down and paddling involved. I just strap in, I'm already kind of standing up and I can just go. And I've been snowboarding for about 30 years. I started snowboarding when I was about 20, 21. And that's kind of a crazy story how that came about too. You know, some street shit brought me into snowboarding and
some street shit brought you to snowboarding?
Yeah, man, it's kind of crazy, dude. Some street shit is what got me into being a full-time snowboarder. How about that?
Oh, okay.
So, I was 22, 23 years old, and as I mentioned to you, you know, when I wasn't surfing and hanging out with my surfing friends, I'd hang out with a lot of street dudes. And I had certain buddies that were involved with certain things and ran with certain crews in Long Beach and, you know, other cities and whatnot. And I had this one friend, man, my boy Boo Boo. What's up, Boo Boo? He's still around out there, man. And he was pretty off the fucking hook, dude. He belonged to a certain fucking, you know, gang in Long Beach and stuff. And but he and I have been friends since elementary school. We grew up together, you know. So he was my boy, yeah. And one night we were fucking drunk and all fucked up, and we were driving around Long Beach, and we pull up to this fucking corner, and he just pulls out his I'm driving, and he pulls out his fucking gun and just starts fucking shooting out of my car. At like this street sign in his house, it's on this corner or whatever. I don't even know what the fuck he was doing to this day, for real. He wasn't shooting at anybody.
He was wilding out.
He was just wilding out, all off the fucking hook for no reason, you know? And I just was like, what the fuck you doing, dude? You know, like, you know, I knew he was fucking carrying his piece. That wasn't nothing surprising, but it was unusual for him to do that, you know? And so he starts fucking wilding out and popping caps out of the fucking car and everything, and we fucking take off and split, and then man, we're driving around, and I'd say, I don't even know, 'cause once again, like I said, we're all fucked up, but maybe let's call it an hour later. He's like, hey man, he's like, pull over right here. And I'm like, all right, I pull over, and I'm all, what's up? And he goes, I'm gonna go over there and fucking, he goes, so-and-so lives right here, and because of him, he snitched on our buddy. You know, I don't want to get into any more details other than that, like who it was or whatever.
Right.
But he goes, I'm gonna go fucking handle this, dude. And he's like, stay here, keep the car running and shit, you know? And honestly, like, I ain't built for that, man. That's not what I'm into, dude, you know? But I didn't want to, you know, be like a sucker or whatever. He was my fucking friend forever. And and then I was all fucked up, drunk, we're smoking fucking blunts and shit and everything, and sitting there in the car, and, you know, he's like, you down? You got my back? You gonna be here when I come back? And I'm all like, and I go, yeah, I'll be here, man. I'm just in my head thinking, like, man, he ain't gonna do this fucking shit. I didn't even think he was serious, you know? And he fucking gets out of the car, pulls his fucking hoodie up or whatever, goes up to this house and knocks on the fucking door. And thank God nobody answered the door. So a couple minutes later, he comes back. He's like, fucking no one answered, whatever, let's get the fuck out of here. And right then I look, and in my head, I'm like, fucking thank God, dude, you know? And it was always trouble when I hang out with him. I mean, if I want to get in some trouble, I hang out with Boo Boo. We just been doing shit together our whole fucking lives. But that was on a whole nother level of stuff that I'm not really, that's not me, right. You know? And I think a lot of us go through that. We don't want to seem weak, or we don't want to fucking be soft, or, you know, we don't want the homies fucking talking shit or whatever. And so he comes back, gets in the car, and then right when he gets in the car, across the street, there's a cop. Fucking Popo. And he's fucking and it's like 3 a.m. or some shit, you know? And I got my lights on. Like, we just stood out. We shouldn't be where we were, doing what we were doing. I got my lights on, but he's like across the intersection, and we see him, and we could tell he's like kind of going, he's creeping, going slow, and he's looking at us. And Boo Boo goes, dude, let's get the fuck out of here. And I just punched it and started taking off. And we go through the neighborhood, and all of a sudden we see the cop coming down like I'm like a block and a half away. Now the cop did notice us. He comes our way and he starts chasing us. So we're in like a low-key high-speed chase, right? He's like 2 blocks away or something, and we're fucking zigzagging through the neighborhood, and we know where we're at real good too. So the cop's chasing us. He's not on our tail by any means. You know, like I said, he's a fucking probably 2 blocks away, but we could see him in the rearview mirror. We take a turn, and then a block away or 2 blocks away here, he comes around the corner, and he's chasing us. And we managed to fucking get away, or so we thought. And not even fucking shitting you, dude. I pulled down my street where I lived, on my block. And out of nowhere, here comes this fucking cop. Boom, on us, just fucking pops out of nowhere, pulls us over. And I'm like, oh, fuck. Boo Boo's got his fucking gun on him. He's been fucking popping caps out of the car, dude. And there's fucking shells fucking everywhere, you know. And this cop comes up to us, and I'm about 5 houses away from my house. And this cop fucking pulls up, comes up to our fucking thing, and we just were smoking one too, you know. Comes up to the window, he's like, hey, what the fuck you guys doing? And he's kind of an older cop. Thank God. I think that's what, he just didn't feel like going through the fucking shit. And he's like, what are you guys doing? I'm like, oh man, I'm going home. I go, I live right there. And he goes, where? He goes, you got some ID? And I go, yeah. And I gave my ID, and he looked, and he saw that I live like 5 houses away or something. And he goes, he's like, well, what the fuck are you guys doing? He goes, you've been smoking weed in here? And I go, yeah, like we were just smoking a fucking joint, you know? And I was honest with him. I told him, yeah. And I'm fucking shitting my pants, but I'm playing it totally cool, trying not to act like I'm drunk as fuck too. And maybe a little adrenaline kicking in at the time or something. So he goes, runs my fucking license or whatever. He doesn't pay much attention to fucking Boo Boo, thank God. And, cause he's kind of a known dude. Boo Boo, he's been fucking, you know, he's been in some trouble and shit. He's like associated and everything. And anyways, comes back, gives me my fucking license, and then he goes, oh, and he's shining his fucking light on my inside the truck. He's got his fucking mag light. He's shining his light inside my car, looking around to see what we got in there, you know, doing all the shit. But he never fucking pulls us out of the car. He goes, get out of the fucking car, walk your ass home. And he goes, if I fucking see you driving around tonight again, I'm taking you to fucking jail. I go, cool, no worries. Oh, what I forgot to mention was when he was chasing us, we threw the gun out of the car. Okay. Actually, that's a part of the story. Threw the gun out of the fucking car, and I don't know how I remember where that shit went. Fast forward back to where he pulls us over, tells us to, okay, get up, lock your car up, walk home. Don't let me fucking see you out here again tonight. So I went home and went to my next door neighbors, and I banged on her window. She to this day is like my big sister, man. Her name's Kathy. Thanks, Kathy. And I knock on her window, and she's like, hey, and she's like 20 years older than me. You know, she's like my big sister. She's a neighbor, and I've known her my whole fucking life. And you know, honestly, I didn't still live there. My parents lived there. Okay. But it's the house that I grew up in. And we'd made it back to that area. So that's how I've known this lady, Kathy, for so long. So I knock on her fucking window. I go, Kathy. She's like, who is it? What the fuck? You know, I go, hey, it's fucking Rob. I go, we threw this gun in the bush, the cops, fuck, blah, blah, blah. We got to go back and get the gun. Will you take us over there? She just jumps right out of bed. She goes, let's go. And we went back and found the fucking gun. We had to park the car and light it all up. He goes in and gets out and gets the gun. The neighbors start coming out and shit. But we get the gun, and we fucking disappear, make it back home, and nothing happened. And that was it. The next day, I'm like, fuck, dude. I'm even like kind of looking at the papers to see if he fucking shot somebody or something, you know, like when we're at that corner. Because it was at a light, and there's a house, and there's signs. Like, you know, I'm like, dude, fucking stray bullet hit somebody or something. And so nothing happened. That was it, dude. You know, not the craziest shit in the world, but that little thing right there, I was kind of like, man, I can't be fucking, that's just not heading me in the path of life that I want to be fucking going down. It was an eye-opener for me, you know? And I was kind of like, man, you ain't about this fucking street shit like that, dude. That's just, you might be selling your fucking weed and doing this and hanging out with these dudes, and yeah, you grew up around all this kind of shit, but that's more than what you want to be fucking, that's what, I'm not signing up for that. Period. So I'd started snowboarding a lot, kind of little bit before that. And, you know, right after that, I started really reassessing my life, who I was going to hang out with. Even, like, I think I'm going to stop hanging out with Boo Boo for a while. He's getting a little, because he's just getting deeper and deeper into his shit, you know. And after that, he ended up doing some time and getting busted for drugs and, you know. But I knew I wanted to go on a different path. So, so friends of mine were like, hey, let's go on a snowboard trip to Colorado. I go, okay, cool. And I went on the snowboard trip with them to Colorado. And that trip changed my life. And this was right after all this stuff. I'm like, man, okay. I decided, you know what, I want to move out of Long Beach for a while. And when we came back from this trip, I told my friend, I said, let's move to Colorado and just go fucking snowboard and change our lives and shit, you know. It was a totally different friend of mine, Dave Kelly. I said, let's move to Colorado and just see something other than Long Beach, man. Let's see what else is out there. Because I hadn't been anywhere else. I take that back. You know, I've been to like Hawaii and stuff, and then I spent a lot of time in Mexico. Yeah. But that was all still, you know, just running fucking wild and you know, I was smuggling weed over to fucking Hawaii and shit, you know, like kind of decent and pretty big amounts for the time. And that's how I'd pay for my trips over there. So I was always involved in that kind of shit. But I've never been a real fucking violent dude. I'm not down with the guns and killing people, and that's not my thing, you know. And been in plenty of fucking fist fights and all that's cool. Knuckle to knuckle, that's one thing. But anyway, I'd never lived anywhere else. So I go, let's move out to Colorado. So my friend and I moved out to Colorado, and that changed my fucking life, man. We got jobs at night. We were snowboarding all fucking day long. Next thing I know, man, I was out there for 5 years, you know, and spent the summers fucking trout fishing. I met this whole different demographic of people, saw a whole nother way of living, and really woke up and pulled my head out of my ass, you know what I mean? So kind of all because that one night, you know, or maybe it was all these other things that led up to that one night, and that one night was like kind of like the fucking the impetus of that just changed everything, you know, and it was the genesis of me beginning this new life and stuff. And it was really fucking cool, man. And it just transformed me into a different person, and once again opened my eyes to, man, this ain't the way you want to be living. So since then I really just became a different person. And I came home and started doing a lot of things and met my wife, had my son, bought a house, you know, and just the rest is history. And then did the whole photography thing and all these other things that I've done in my life, you know. And so it's been an interesting road, you know. There's a lot of stuff that's in between everything we just talked about, yeah. But those are some of the major changing points in my life. But I think it's important for people to see things outside of their neighborhood and out of their everyday life. And I think a lot of people get caught up like that. I think there's a lot of people that are in gangs, or they do get in a lot of trouble, they end up in prison or whatnot, because they didn't know that there's other things in life out there, you know. They just get stuck and caught up with their environment that they've been in their entire life, and they don't really realize that there's so much more to offer out there. So I traveled quite a bit as a surfer, but moving to Colorado once again was powerful for me, and it really just changed my thinking and just showed me a whole nother way of life, man. It was great. Yeah,
it changed your whole mindset. Speaking of mindset, you recently you started coaching, mindset coaching, right? Inspirational. You're motivational. You're doing all this stuff. What got you into that? Into motivating people, man?
Yeah, so I'm a mindset personal development coach. Yeah. You know, I kind of do that part-time. It's something I've been getting into for the last couple of years. Everything I've been through in my life has kind of led me up to this point, but specifically my injuries and my back surgeries. I've also had 3 hip surgeries. I've broken my collarbones. I've had all these crazy injuries, man, you know. But it takes a lot of mental prowess and mental strength to overcome, especially back surgeries, and to start being active again, you know. So as I started putting my story out there, I've gone through bouts of trying to get back in shape and get my physical health back, and with different levels of success with that. But over the last couple of years, I really tightened the reins and really been, bringing my health to another level and my fitness. And as I've been documenting that and showing that on my Instagram page and my social media, it's been a powerful tool to keep me engaged in that lifestyle, but it's also been a powerful tool with helping others. And I love to help people, man. It's one of the favorite things and, greatest joys you can have, I think, at least for me, is to help people. And I love being able to do that. And that's, once again, what the whole incident back in the day with Boo Boo and the shooting thing and everything, that just was not what I was about. It's the opposite of what I was about. I'm not about hurting people, There's a time and a place if you got to defend yourself, and that's a whole different story, right? But for, senseless acts of violence and whatnot and over excessive violence, I'm not down with that stuff. I'd much rather lend somebody a helping hand, man, and help somebody through their problems. So as I started spotlighting my journey to better health and overcoming my demons that have come along with my back surgeries and my hip surgeries, but mostly the back surgeries, because those back surgeries have affected my life in a negative way in every single aspect you can imagine. There's not one area of my life that has not affected in a negative way. None. So I've had to learn how to overcome these. I've had to compile an assortment of different tools to help me get through life, and as I've accumulated these tools and started kind of projecting them out into the public through my social media, a lot of people have been coming to me and asking me for help, and hey, Rob, I've got this problem, I'm struggling with this, I suffer from that, I don't know how to deal with this, and it's like I'm a fucking street counselor or something, man, right. And because people have witnessed the changes that I've made in my life. At one point, after all my injuries and everything, I was 220 pounds. I was fat as fuck, out of shape, depressed, discouraged. I got this piece of paper here. I'm gonna rip off all these emotions that I wrote down on a piece of paper that I was suffering from at one point in my life. But I was broken, depressed, tired, sad, physically broke, frustrated, defeated, angry, suicidal, lost, lonely, discouraged, confused, desperate, worried, helpless, worn out, concerned, exhausted, stuck, heartbroken, scared, and scarred. Those are all the emotions that I had compiled up in me at one time for years, and it took me quite a while to learn and to find the tools to overcome all those things. And I still on occasion, suffer from one or two of those here and there, like I'm human still, but on a grander, larger picture, I've overcome all those things and have gotten my life back and become a much stronger person from it, much wiser person, I've really had to go into battle to change myself. So, but I've put that process out there on my social media over the last 3-4 years or whatever, and people have really seen that and started coming to me and asking for guidance and help and suggestions and tools to help them change their lives. And so that led me into deciding, like, hey man, I'm spending so much time helping people. And a lot of, some of them people that I know, and some of them are complete strangers, but they're coming to me asking me for my advice. And so I decided to turn that to try to monetize that a little bit, because I'm spending so much time. It's taking time away from my family because I'm taking time to help out these people, which makes me feel amazing. I just feel so good to be able to do that. But I'm like, okay, well, this is really taking up a lot of my time. Maybe I should try to make somewhat of a living off of this. Maybe if I can make some money, maybe come up with some type of coaching mentorship program that people can come to me and sign up for, and I can help guide them and coach them to becoming a better person, a better man or a better woman, a better husband, a better father, a better wife, a better mom, whatever it is. And at the same time, do something that I feel really, really good about, you know, like, and so it gives me a lot of purpose to do that. I've always been like that as well. I always need to be doing things that give me purpose, that make me feel good and like feel like I'm helping others. And so that's kind of how that came about, you know. And I mentioned I was 220 pounds, and I put my transformation from 220 to now I weigh 140 pounds.
Wow.
So at one point I was down to like 135, you know. I was like, oh, you're a little too skinny, dude. You need to put on a few pounds. So ultimately I lost 85 pounds at one point. And now I'm 80 pounds lighter, and I've kept that weight off, become much more physically stronger and aware and disciplined. One of the most important things that I've taught myself and learned is discipline. And that's another thing that I help people build as their personal discipline when they come to me and jump on my coaching program. Because when you have discipline, that trickles off into all areas of your life and just helps you become successful in more ways than just a physical way or whatever, you know, and on all aspects of your life. So that's kind of showing my transformation is what gave me the real credibility, you know, and they see where I'm at with my family life. You know, today I own a house. Once again, I've owned my house for almost 20 years. I just celebrated my 17-year wedding anniversary with my wife. My son is 16. You know, I live and lead a stable lifestyle. And I have my ups and downs like everybody else. Don't get me wrong. And I'm not trying to sit here and say I got it all fucking figured out, you know. But once again, I've built this toolbox, man, of things that I can fall back onto to help me deal with my problems and situations in life. And so I pass that on. You know, I basically give people, you know, I share my tools with them. I give them the blueprint of how I changed my life, and I let them know if you stick to this blueprint, you put your heart and soul into it, you can change your life too. You know, I always say we don't just build a house with just a hammer, right? We need the whole toolbox. We need a whole assortment and variety of different tools to build that house. And that's kind of my analogy for life. You know, we need a lot of different tools because there's a lot of different problems and struggles and situations that we encounter, you know, in our day-to-day. And so the more tools you have in your toolbox, the more likely you are to be successful in life or to be able to overcome your day-to-day problems, whatever they may be, you know. So once again, I don't have it all figured out, but I've made a lot of progress in my life, and people have seen that. And so they come to me asking for help, you know, and I'm there for them, man. So, you know, me versus me mindset. That's my coaching name. Yeah, you know, and because I think that speaks for itself, the whole me versus me thing. A lot of times we can get in our own way, right? We can be our own worst enemies, and it's not me versus you, Bobby, it's me versus myself, right? You know, we can get in our own heads, we can throw ourselves off track, we can detour ourselves from the things we really want in life, but most of the time we're really just getting in our own fucking way, you know. So I'm here to help you get out of your own fucking way and to stop fucking up your life more than you already have. That's
what's up, man. That's awesome.
Thank you, bro.
It takes a lot of discipline to do what you're doing, to lose 80 something pounds, man. It takes a whole lot of discipline. How does it make you feel to hear when somebody says that you changed their life?
It's unbelievable, man. It's like, it's surreal because I feel like ultimately, I mean, I'm a fuck up in a lot of ways, you know. I've always been this mischievous guy, kind of a delinquent and everything. And I didn't always believe in myself like that. I didn't always know that I had the qualities to help somebody change their lives and make them better. And as I started realizing that I do have those qualities and I'm really making a difference in someone's life, and then when their kid comes to me and tells me that, dude, you really changed my dad's life, fucking thank you, man. And what you taught him is actually rubbing off on me, or the mom or the wife comes to me and tells me like, fuck, thank you, Rob, you know. So it's an amazing feeling. It's hard to beat that feeling, you know. And I'm just, I feel like, you know, I mentioned earlier how my back problems have touched every area in my life in a negative way, but I've managed to find the reasons and some purpose out of my back situation, that, you know, I've been able to assemble a technique or some ways that I can use that as a power. That's my superpower. That's what I use my struggles to help other people with what I've learned, you know? So it's pretty amazing. And I've learned a lot about myself, obviously, through that. And one of those things is that I think my purpose is to be here to help people out, man. And so to answer your question, it's an amazing fucking feeling, man.
What plans do we got in the future, Rob?
Man, in the future, I got a lot of plans. First plan is probably go snowboarding next week. I'm ready to start getting back on the mountain. It's winter time, and I'm ready to start riding. The plan is to stay physically fit and healthy, and to maintain this lifestyle as I get older. I'm 51 now, you know, and I notice as I started getting older, you know, we start noticing that either ourselves or our friends and family start coming down with health problems. So my biggest plan and goal is to stay healthy and to continue being able to do the things that I love as long as I can. You know, we'll just say snowboarding, for instance. I'm real passionate about snowboarding next to surfing. It's one of the greatest loves of my life, you know, and it's something that if I maintain my health, I can continue to do for the rest of my life. But I just want to be successful and happy, and I want to really build up my coaching brand and help as many people as possible, because that's, once again, something I really am passionate about. So I think that's it. Get my son into college. He's 16. You know I mentioned that already, but he's a couple years away from wanting to go to college, and just to do cool shit with my wife and my family, you know, and just become a better person than I am today. Just to always be better tomorrow than I am today, you know. And my mom's a diabetic. My dad's got some heart problems, and I want to stay away from those issues. It's another big part of the reason why I took my health into, you know, made it such a priority for myself. I have a saying, man, that for us 40 and over people, it's like, and I'm not really a golfer, but I have this analogy. I say, hey, man, we're playing the back nine of life now. How are we going to make that play out, right? Because after 40, you can still continue to improve your life, but if you don't, it's all fucking downhill from there, man. If you're not watching out what you're doing. Next thing you know, you got diabetes, heart problems. I got friends that are having fucking strokes and shit, you know, and they're fucking either dead or they're half paralyzed, and I don't want nothing to do with any of that shit. So my goal is, once again, to stay as healthy as possible, and just and to show my son also too how to overcome and to dig yourself out of fucking the ditches of life, man, you know, and anyone else, not just my son, but so yeah, that's kind of what the future holds for me, I think. And travel. I want to travel a bunch too, man, you know. Me and my wife and my son, I want to go do cool shit with them. So
Rob, if there's a message you can give to somebody who's struggling with depression or suicidal, what would that message be?
Man, there's a lot of different ways to combat that, I think, but what worked for me was exercise and nutrition. My suggestion would be, no matter how you feel, get up and go out and get some exercise and start doing that on a regular basis. No one's gonna fucking pull you out of that. You know, we have to pull ourselves out of that. And it's all a mindset thing. I think learn to change your perspective, reach out for help. Don't ever be too good or too shy or embarrassed or let your ego get in the way or whatever from reaching out for help, man. Because reaching out for help is the first step. And a lot of times, myself included, you know, I didn't know who to reach out to, and it had to get so bad where I finally was so desperate that I did start reaching out to counselors and therapists and psychologists. And those guys are all great and everything, but they didn't do a whole lot for me. It was people coming at me with the hard truths, you know, and hard truths and realities that made me change, you know, and physical fitness is the tool that I use to keep my fucking demons over there, you know. I was saying too, it is the physical work is the mental work. Because when you exercise and you're exerting yourself physically and you got the endorphins going and the blood is flowing, that takes your mind off your problems, you know. And it just, when you release endorphins, it just naturally, that's your body's way of making you feel better, right? So that's been my secret recipe, and I know that's been a lot of people's secret recipe, you know, and maybe not so secret, but that's the recipe. I used to think that guys that were in the gym all the time were just like these fucking real vain people. They just want to stand in the fucking mirror and look at their muscles and shit, and they're just working out so they can look good. And I never understood that until gnarly shit started happening in my life, and I was suffering from depression, and I was suicidal and just lost and didn't know where to turn, you know. And my mentors turned me on to physical fitness and better nutrition, you know, and that changed my life. And that's why I'm an advocate of that, because that's what worked for me. And that's part of my coaching program. It's mindset coaching. We build discipline. We use fitness, and I help guide you with your nutrition. And those things, I believe, are some key elements to changing your life and just making, a lot of times it's in the food, you know. I mean, you could have legit problems in your life, but it's a lot of times what we're consuming also. Processed food, fast food, and all the chemicals that come in that, they just bring us down. People don't really realize that, and I was in denial of that myself, you know. I used to just live, that's how I got to 220 pounds. I just kind of lived on processed food, fast food. And I'd go see my doctor, like, man, I'm fucking depressed and I feel like shit all the fucking time and I don't know why. I've done everything. I've seen therapists, and he's like, well, dude, you're obese. You're fucking eat like shit all the time. And he would tell me these things, and I would just be in denial. And I'd say, what? I'm an athlete, dude, not me. You're tripping. And he'd be like, well, look, we just weighed you and took your blood, and it says you're obese. And I would still be in denial, like, you don't know what you're talking about. Okay? And then finally, that changed. Once I took my life under control and started getting, because after I got hurt, I started being less physically active. Right? I was always physically active until I started having really bad back problems. So another thing that I'm really, really passionate about is helping people get back to their lives after they've had injuries. Because that takes a whole certain type of mindset and courage to do that, you know? So, but anyone that's suffering from depression and whatnot, I think it's important to get up and get moving, you know, because whatever it is that you went through it. It's never going to change. So if you just sit there and dwell on that 24/7 and sit in the house and you're just not doing any extracurricular stuff, then that you're never really going to be able to push that behind you, you know? So, because I still have, my spinal problems are never going to go away. So I've had to learn how to work around that, you know? And my back still gives me problems. Like I said, you know, I get those radio frequency ablations, and when those start wearing off and my nerves start waking back up again, I'm in a world of fucking pain, you know. And that's like my whole life flashes before me, and it's like all that starts resurfacing. Everything I went through starts resurfacing again in reality, you know, because I start feeling that pain in my spine again and stuff. And so it's like you continuously have to go through this. For me, this is what it's like. It never fucking ends, you know. It gets postponed and then buried for a little while. And those procedures last me about a year or so. But it never ends. So I have to have a strong mindset to learn how to combat that, to deal with that, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
You know, for me, I hate using this analogy, but I do. It's like, for me, it's like, let's say somebody had been molested at any point in their life. Then the molestation stops, but you live next door to the guy that molested you. So you come home every day, although he's not molesting you anymore, he's still there, and the reminder is still there. It's kind of how it is with my back, dude. I don't know if that's the best analogy, but like, it's never gonna go away. And it's with my spine, when the pain comes back around, it's like, there's the guy that just ruined my fucking life. He's back.
Right.
He's still there. And I might think he's gone for a while, you know, or let's say you live next door to the guy that molested you, but never see him. And every once in a while you come home and then he's outside. You haven't seen him in 8 months, and all of a sudden now one day he's outside watering his lawn, and it just brings it all right back to the surface. It's kind of how my back shit is, dude. Maybe that's not the best analogy, but my back problems are never going to go away. But also with my nutrition changes and regular physical activity, it has strengthened my body, and my back doesn't give me as many problems. And by eating healthier foods that are not, you know, that are anti-inflammatory, my body doesn't hurt all the fucking time. Like, I feel pretty amazing for the most part all the time until my back goes out of me. So the nutrition has been a huge thing, but that's, I believe, also affects our mindset and the way we think, you know, the chemicals in fast food and processed food versus whole foods and just preparing your meals at home and whatnot, you know. I think that really has a lot to do with mental stability as well. So those have just been kind of my main little keys, dude, to dealing with my you know, with suppressing my depression and suicidal feelings and everything that's come with my back problems. So, because they're hard to deal with, man. It's hard to make it through life when you have chronic back pain and problems. And my whole entire spine is all fucked up. Not like just one disc, you know. So, but I want people to know that they can overcome almost anything in life, man, you know. And you just got to be open-minded to trying different things and finding what works for you.
Rob, thanks for being here. Appreciate your input. Wish you nothing but the best. Keep pushing forward. Keep motivating people. I think people need that. They do. People need motivation. They need to be inspired. So many people go through problems, and I think that you're doing the right thing. Keep up the great work, man.
Thanks, Bobby. I appreciate that. You know, one thing I always try to tell myself is that there's always somebody out there, and this is totally cliche, there's somebody out there that's going through way fucking worse than what I'm going through. You know, and once I took on that perspective, that's helped out a lot. And go listen to other people's fucking horror stories, man. It might make you feel like your situation's not so bad. So that's another little tidbit of advice I think I have for people that are going through some shit. And are you really going through some shit? Or are you just used to getting your way and things just aren't going how you fucking want them to? You know, so take a look around, take a look at yourself and your perspective and figure that out, you know? And that might just help you change the way you're thinking and feeling and performing in life.
Rob, thanks again.
Bobby, man, my pleasure. Thank you for having me, brother.